Hi everyone, I'm presenting our work exploring the information needs of Somaliland pastoralists, design considerations for digital climate adaptation services. My name's Jake Rigby and I'm also presenting this on behalf of my co-authors Kathy, Chris, Amel, Karlee, Mustafe, Ahmed and Katerina. So I'll first give some background about this research. Climate change is affecting rural communities across East Africa, which is largely a dryland region and so is reliant on rainfall. However, seasons and the weather are no longer predictable due to climate change. And climate shocks can lead to immediate impacts that can lead to loss of life, for example, drought, flash floods, etc., but also ongoing disruption, such as conflict over resources and reduced household incomes. Our research focuses on Somaliland, which is an autonomous region of Somalia, which is itself located in the Horn of Africa. Again, this is a dryland region and is particularly at risk from drought. And livelihoods in Somaliland are strongly linked to the weather and the land, with 60% of the population being pastoralists, that is, animal herders who move around looking for pasture and water. And these communities may be nomadic or semi-nomadic. Mobile systems offer potential solutions to help mitigate against some of the problems that communities are facing in Somaliland. For example, there is potential to receive information about weather and climate through mobile phones to help communities plan for upcoming conditions. And mobile ownership is growing in the country and signal coverage is known to be good. However, there are some challenges to using mobile phones. Firstly, technical challenges such as low quality handsets, poor battery, and no way to charge them. And they can also be expensive to buy and use. There are also social challenges, such as low levels of literacy and language barriers. So I'll tell you about what we actually did. As a quick overview, we conducted interviews with pastoralists in Somaliland to understand how they use technology and what access they have, what information they need for their livelihoods, and the potential for future technologies. And we also held a focus group with development experts from Somaliland to explore the implications of different design decisions for future systems. The local and cultural context is important here. So Somaliland and Somalia, the society is based around a clan system, and it's a large part of the culture and defines social structures in the region. And with this comes a system of local customary laws, which is used to manage intergroup relationships and grievances and control access to resources, especially in rural areas. And it's highly patriarchal. Men dominate decision-making and women can be marginalised, and decision-making is typically led by elders in a community. And women also have less access to technology, so where a household might own a phone, it would typically be controlled by the husband. And around half of children will not go to school, and this is even less likely for girls. I'd also like to make clear our positionality on this project. So it was an interdisciplinary project combining people from HCI, hydrology and climate science, and also development. And it was led by European researchers from well-funded universities, but it was in collaboration with researchers in Somaliland, so a Somali local research enterprise and independent scholars, and that included both male and female personnel. So study one was the interviews. So we conducted 30 interviews with pastoralists who had travelled to a market, markets in different locations to trade. And there were 16 women and 14 men, aged between 40 and 70, with a mean age of 54. And they were compensated with rice and water supplies to around 15 USD in value, which covers subsistence for about 10 days. And this was conducted by our Somali partners in the Somali language. And the questions covered their technology ownership and use, access they had to different information sources, what information they needed for their livelihoods, and the potential for future mobile apps specifically designed for pastoralists. So at the time, there were a couple of apps which were aimed at these communities, though not in Somaliland specifically, and we showed them screenshots and asked their opinion on them. So what did we find? Well, on the subject of technology access and ownership, 70% had access to a radio, which is a common way to receive information. 70% had access to a feature phone, but only 47% actually owned the phone themselves. And 27% had access to a smartphone, but only 17% owned it themselves. In terms of information needs and access, all participants were worried about climate change and said they were already being affected. And they also said that access to relevant and timely information is important to them, especially rainfall, which can help them mitigate the effects of climate change. And information is mostly accessed currently by word of mouth, so that can be in person or via voice calls. When we asked them about future mobile apps, most said that an app would be useful for them, as it could save time and resources looking for pasture and water. And the information they would most be interested in is information about climate, weather and water availability. However, the participants themselves acknowledged that literacy and tech skills, or lack thereof, could be a major barrier to them using such a system. Therefore, information should be audio and visual in their opinion. Following the interviews, we conducted a focus group with 4 Somali development experts to further contextualise our results and explore different design decisions. The focus group was conducted remotely in English by 2 Somali and 2 European researchers, and we discussed different design decisions and their implications. 2 of the participants were female and 2 were male. To analyse the focus group, we transcribed the audio and used reflexive thematic analysis, where we developed 4 themes. The first one is importance of traditional structures and practices. As I previously mentioned, elders typically are heads of communities and will oversee the day-to-day running of communities and decision making, and this is a very important element of Somali society in rural Somaliland. Number 2 is community decision making and the role of community representatives as facilitators. So although elders may oversee communities and decision making, often they play the role of a facilitator, trying to bring in relevant voices to make good decisions for the entire community, rather than simply dictating the process. And it's important to note that decision making is a community endeavour, as it affects everybody. Number 3 is the impact of changes and ongoing transitions. Many communities are moving away from using traditional and indigenous knowledge to scientific knowledge, which they may be provided with or seek themselves. Not only that, but some communities are becoming more sedentary as they get fixed services through development programs, for example, a water source. Number 4 is opportunities for technology in a changing world. So also, technology is becoming easier to access and cheaper for people, but also communities are becoming more educated, and this presents opportunities for technology to have an impact in their lives. Through the work that we did with our interviews and our focus group, we suggest that there are a number of implications for designers when designing technologies for these communities. The first is designing for community. So we should be mindful of community decision-making processes and design systems that integrate with these rather than diverge from them. So integrating with current community practices. Number 2 is designing for inclusivity and sharing. We found that not everybody owns or even has access to a mobile phone. Therefore, systems should be designed to benefit those beyond the technology owner, to encourage them to be shared through the wider community. Number 3 is designing with power structures in mind. As there are power structures in rural Somaliland, so communities typically headed by male elders, we should be wary about whether we want to challenge those through technology or not. For example, delivering information to people who would not normally have access to it, or who are not a respected member of the community when compared to an elder. So if we give information to somebody who wouldn't usually have access to it, and then they try to act on it, this could sow disharmony in the community. So we should ensure that we don't try and challenge these structures too much. The next is designing to build trust. Trust is a very important element in making sure that information is used, because information and sources that aren't trusted just won't be used. So we should design with this in mind. For example, if we can encourage elders and other trusted members of the community to use a system, this could encourage other members to use it as well, as then they would also implicitly trust it. And finally is designing in the face of change. As these communities are in a state of change, moving from traditional information to scientific information, often becoming more fixed to one place and less nomadic, we should bear in mind that the use cases for technology and system design for them may also be changing. Therefore, constantly re-engaging with communities and using good user-centered design principles should allow for this. So in conclusion, pastoralists in Somaliland are at risk from climate change. Timely information about weather and climate could help them, however, and mobile phones offer a way to convey this information to communities. Our interviews identified a desire for information that could be delivered through technology, and our focus groups further contextualised these results and revealed important considerations when designing for these communities. Thank you.